evening. Here is top news newsletter, starting with the headlines. Syrian army strikes terrorists destroy their vehicles in several areas. Al-Jafari Jolan was and would always remain Syrian territory. 1,000 US troops trains terrorists in 3 countries. Units of the army and armed forces killed a large number of terrorists, injured others, and destroyed 2 vehicles equipped with heavy machine guns in the area surrounding Al-Benj, Armanas town, Kafr al-Takhrim in Idlib countryside. In the central province of Homs, units of the army and armed forces killed and injured a number of terrorists in Rahum, Bab al-Hawa, and areas surrounding Al-Mashurfi and Al-San in Homs countryside. Army and armed forces eliminated many terrorists and injured others in Busra al-Sham and Al-Jiz and Dara countryside, and many terrorists were killed and others injured in the area that surrounds Bilal al-Habashi mosque. Syria's permanent representative to the UN, Dr. Bashar al-Jafari, said Jolan was and would always remain a Syrian territory, despite the current circumstances taking place in the country, and will continue our struggle for the full restoration of it until the line of June 4th, 1967. He said that the UN should be serious and show interest in dealing with the occupied Syrian Jordan according to the UNSC resolutions in this regard, particularly resolutions number 497 for 1981. He pointed that the UN inability to force Israel to comply with its resolutions is unacceptable, especially those related to halting systematic violations of the human rights and putting an end to its policies of settlements, discrimination, suppression, and arbitrary arrests against Syrian citizens. In addition to tightening grip on them, not to mention its plans to theft Golan natural resources including water, gas, and oil. He noted that the recent decision issued by the Supreme Court of Israel lifting the ban on drilling for oil, permitting Israeli companies to start drilling works in a clear violation of international law. He added that Israel is taking part in the plotting against Syria and providing support to takfiri terrorism in the country in order to destroy it. Israeli involvement became clearly evident when Israeli war airplanes launched several strikes against different targets in the Syrian territories. Stating his unwillingness to respond to misleading allegations in statements of delegations of the EU, US, Britain, France, and Saudi Arabia, Al-Jafari noted that they are meant to divert attention from the Israeli occupation and reduce the international pressure on it, adding that these countries themselves don't respect UNSC resolutions on counterterrorism, especially 2170 and 2178. The US military will send nearly 1,000 troops to train Syrian terrorist forces as a part of a long-planned effort to build up a moderate position to take on the so-called ISIS group, as Al-Pentagon said. The training will take place in Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Qatar, and is expected to start in the early spring, spokesman Rear Admiral Juan Kirby said. The total troop number for this mission could approach 1,000, Kirby said. It might even exceed that. The U.S. Congress passed legislation last month to fund the training and equipping moderate Syrian terrorists, allocating about $500 million for the Syrian effort. But President Barack Obama has been accused of moving too slowly to help the opposition, while the so-called ISIS group and other extremists have taken on a dominant role on the battlefield. Obama, worried of having the U.S. drawn into Syria's multi-sided civil war, had long kept what he called moderate terrorists at arm's length. But the rise of the so-called ISIS groups last year promoted a change in strategy, with the U.S. President announcing plans in September to train and arm the opposition. The U.S. administration, however, has placed a priority on fighting the so-called ISIS militants rather than President Bashar al-Assad's government, an impasse that he led to disagreement with some allies, including Turkey. Major General Michel Nagata, who is overseeing the U.S.-led fight against the so-called ISIS terrorists in Syria, met a range of opposition figures in Istanbul earlier this week, and they came away encouraged, Kirby said, to avoid a repeat of insider attacks that have blocked the military training mission in Afghanistan. A portion of the U.S. troops to be deployed with a focus on security for their compatriots, as he said. Japan announced its cooperation to fight the so-called ISIS by pledged about $200 million in non-military support for countries who are fighting Islamic State extremists, as Japan Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Should we leave terrorism or weapons of mass destruction to spread in this region? The loss imparted upon the international community would be immeasurable, as he said. He added that the money will help to build their country's human capacity, infrastructure, and so on. In Russian view, a teenager from Russia's turbulent southern Dagestan Republic is suspected of carrying out a suicide bombing at a police station in Istanbul's tourist Sultan Ahmet Square, which killed one officer and seriously injured another one. Forensic experts in Russia are to compare blood samples from the bomber, believed to be Diana Ramazanova, 19, with those of her mother to confirm her ID. Ramazanova is believed to have been radicalized after meeting radical Islamists through social networks. According to the Turkish media, she married a Norwegian jihadist of Russian origin and traveled with him through Turkey to Syria, where he joined of the local militant group and was killed in December. That's all for today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Inas Ahmed. Good night.